Welcome to The Explainer. We've got a truly fascinating journey ahead of us today. We're going to be unpacking a deeply philosophical lecture that essentially breaks down the entire human relationship with the universe and really with the divine itself. We're looking at this profound theological framework, and we're going to climb this conceptual ladder step by step. So let's dive right in.
Here is our roadmap for today. We'll be covering the Human and Universe book, the power of perspective, the act of God, faith versus disbelief, Tawhid, the password, and finally, the power of prayer. Let's get to it.
Starting off with Section 1, the Human and Universe book, reading the signs of existence.
The speaker kicks off this lecture by completely flipping how we view our everyday surroundings. The core argument here is that the physical world isn't just a random collection of matter. It's a text. Literally, the universe is a book, and the human being is a book too. And a book is meant to be read carefully, not just kind of aimlessly glanced at.
Now, a really critical concept here is the word ayat. Usually, you might hear ayat and just think of it as verses in a holy text, right? But in this framework, it means signs. The idea is that nature, daily events, and even the people around you are all divine messages. But the speaker makes this super important distinction. Looking is absolutely not the same thing as seeing. So many of us look at the world, but we don't actually see the signs. To truly read this massive book of the universe, you need a guide, which in this context is the Quran, to teach you how to decode it. Because if you start viewing people and events as divine signs, your entire approach transforms. You handle everything with so much more care. But here's the catch. Understanding the universe as a book is practically useless if your own internal lens is all distorted.
Which brings us to Section 2, the power of perspective, and how the way we look dictates what we actually see.
Get this. According to the lecture, 90% of human suffering stems not from the actual events themselves, but from our perspective. 90%. So it's not the hardships or the bad breaks we encounter that cause the vast majority of our pain, it's how we are interpreting them. If you view an event as a divine sign, a message to learn from, it becomes this profound growth-oriented experience. But if you just view it as some unfair curse, it destroys you.
To illustrate this, the speaker uses this brilliantly vivid anecdote. I love this. Imagine a guy doing a handstand, right? So he's looking at the entire world upside down. Now imagine you give that guy supreme power and tell him, hey, go fix the world. Because his perspective is upside down, he's going to try to fix the world by turning everything else upside down too. He'll completely ruin it. And that's exactly why the speaker insists that before we ever try to fix the things around us, we absolutely have to fix our own gaze. So if the universe is a book and we need the right perspective to read it, who is the author? Let's see how this builds. Moving to Section 3, the act of God, intervention versus retirement.
The speaker draws a really sharp, clear line here by defining what God is not, starting with this concept of deism. The speaker describes deism basically as the belief in a retired God, a creator who set the whole universe in motion, gave it a little push, and then just walked away to let it run on autopilot. The lecture makes it crystal clear that view is entirely rejected in this theology.
Instead, this framework totally insists on an active God. We're not talking about a passive observer sitting in the sky. This is a divine presence intervening in every single micro moment. It's a highly interactive relationship. The speaker actually references this tradition where human actions physically rise up to the heavens, and divine responses are instantly created and sent right back down. Meaning your actions, whether it's a good deed or a sin, they are never just individual events. They send these massive ripples across the entire universe, triggering immediate divine responses. It's a completely interconnected ecosystem. So, having established this incredibly active universe, how does the human mind respond to that reality?
That takes us to Section 4. Faith versus disbelief, the ultimate dichotomy.
The speaker presents this fascinating philosophical argument here. Faith, or iman, is described as a positive entity, like it's an actual tangible thing. Think of it like a planted seed, or the feeling of love. Disbelief, or kufr, on the other hand, isn't a thing at all. It is strictly a negative state. The speaker compares disbelief to darkness, and actually, darkness isn't a substance you can hold in a box, right? It's quite literally just the absence of light. So by that logic, disbelief is simply the absence of faith. It's just a state of forgetting. And the really crucial point here is how these two states dictate human freedom. The lecture completely redefines what it means to be free. Normally, we think of freedom as just yielding to every single desire we have, right? But in this framework, true freedom is actually knowing your limits.
The core argument is that if you don't submit to one divine authority, you're going to inevitably become a slave to thousands of false ones. Your anger, your pursuit of wealth, your random desires, your fears. Faith, by directing your submission to just one active God, is what actually liberates you from being a slave to all that material noise.
All right, section 5, Tawhid, the password, where we decode the phrase La ilaha illallah.
This brings us to the absolute climax of the speaker's whole theological argument. We are going to decode Tawhid, that really famous phrase representing absolute oneness. And the speaker summarizes this deep, ancient phrase with a surprisingly modern, blunt translation. God is 100% God. That's it. It means assigning absolutely zero divine attributes to anything else. In this view, if you have a 90% or even a 99% belief in God, that's still considered a denial, because any percentage you give over to wealth or your own ego or nature completely compromises that absolute oneness.
Let's walk through the logic the speaker pulls from this single phrase. From La ilaha illallah, 3 totally distinct categories of existence are born. First, you have absolute existence. That is God, the only necessary entity. Second, possible existence. That's you, me, the stars, the universe, basically everything created that didn't strictly have to exist, but does. And third, impossible existence, which covers any other proposed gods. So this one little phrase logically maps out the entire fabric of reality.
To really hammer this home, the speaker uses an awesome modern metaphor. He compares Tawhid to an invaluable password. Imagine the entire universe is this massive hard drive containing just immeasurable, infinite treasure. Without this exact password, you cannot access any of it. The password itself actually becomes more valuable than the physical universe, because it's the one and only key that unlocks the ultimate truth of existence. Okay, let's take a breath and lower the energy slightly. After establishing this vast universe, an active creator, and the ultimate password of existence, how does a normal human being actually apply this?
That leads us nicely to our final section, Section 6, the power of prayer, the heart's conversation.
The speaker brings this massive, cosmic framework all the way down to a beautifully intimate level. Prayer is defined here as the marrow, the absolute brain of worship. It's just the heart's direct, unmediated conversation with the divine. After all that intense talk about galaxies and absolute existence, it all comes down to a quiet conversation.
And there's this quote that just encapsulates it so perfectly. Prayer is the strings of the instrument that vibrates the universe. The speaker actually wraps up the lecture with an extensive, highly poetic prayer of their own. It perfectly demonstrates that interactive relationship we were talking about earlier. When a human speaks genuinely from the heart, it literally plucks the strings of the cosmos, sending echoes all the way up to that active God who listens and who responds.
Well, we've climbed the conceptual ladder from the ground floor all the way to the divine today. But I want to tie all these grand spiritual thoughts right back to our very first concept, your internal lens. If the universe truly is a book, and every event and person in your life is a sign, what perspective are you using to read it today? Are you looking at the world upside down? Just something to think about as you go about your day. Thank you so much for joining me on this intellectual journey, and I will catch you on the next explainer.